Just in case. Ain't got time to rack.
But it's no big deal.
Maybe she forgot.
Squeaking tire.
Alright, so I'm gonna include you on that. Sending it to
She was like, hey, you guys doing that cell phone thing right? She was like, that sucks. Oh, yeah. Y'all gotta quit cheating on your phone. That's the big thing. That's the big wrong to me.
All right, I'd like to call to order the Bedford County School Board meeting for today, October 10th. If you would, Ms. Johnson,
Mr. Hill,
here.
Mr. Daniels.
Here.
Mr. Holbrook.
Here.
Dr. Hubot.
Here.
Mr. Knight.
Here.
Mr. Nelms.
Here.
Mrs. Purvis.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
All right, thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
I'd like to.
Wait a minute. He had a motion. Do I have a second? No. No second. All right. Do I have a motion to, sorry, Diana, you're looking at me.
That's okay. That motion dies.
It did, because nobody gave a second.
If there is no second, that motion dies. You cannot make a motion to approve the agenda again because that motion died. So Mr. Nelms should withdraw his motion.
I withdraw my motion.
All right, so he is withdrawing his motion.
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion to amend the agenda to take one of the policies that is for information, which would be policy JFCG, and move that from information to action.
Okay. All right, so you're making a motion to approve the agenda as it's written, but with the addition of the policy JFCG from info to action.
Correct.
All right. Did I capture that correct, Ms. Johnson?
Sorry.
All right, so I have a motion on the table. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I have a motion by Mr. Daniels and a second by Dr. Hubach. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion as presented by Mr. Daniels is approved. All right, if you will, join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Usually don't make comments before a moment of silence, but there have been several within our community really over the last month and a half that, if you will, remember them. We had teachers. We've also had several students who were either former students or a current student. So if you will, just remember them in your moment of silence and be lifting up their families going forward. So please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. All right, we'll move forward to staff reports 2.01, Superintendent's report. Mr. DePere.
I'd like to first acknowledge Liberty High School and teacher Alicia Snyder for their contribution to the Special Olympics, the Little Feat meet held on Friday, October 4th. They had approximately 200 student participants and over 50 high school volunteers involved in the event that brought opportunities to the many kids there that have special needs to be able to enjoy the joy of athletic competition. It was a great thing to see, and it was very well attended. I would also like to thank Bedford County Public School School board member Chris Daniels for graciously sponsoring our volunteer and emergency services personnel lunch, and also Chris Morris of Eagle Eye Photography for once again donating his services to capture all of the special events. The second item that I wanted to bring up is about the process that I've been going through for the last 2 months in traveling school to school and holding SWOT discussions with principals, faculty, staff, and parents, and I'm starting that process with student councils as well. The process goes through discussion of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. To this point, I have completed 51 such discussions. I have about 7 or 8 more to go. And on top of that, I had approximately 18 or 19 school leadership teams submit. So when all done, there will be close to 70 SWOTs compiled into one aggregated Excel spreadsheet. What I'd like to do tonight is just kind of give you a touch of what maybe 1 or 2 items in that area is, in each area is, so that you understand where I'm going with this as the discussions continue. In strengths, the most significant conversation centers around the passion, dedication, and quality of the faculty and staff within our district, and their overall care and concern for their students were 2 of the top trending items. In weaknesses, the area that showed the most variance was the discussion of teacher pay and fatigue, lack of resources, teacher shortages, and lack of funding. In opportunities, discussion pretty much centered around one item, and that was how can we better engage in community partnerships. The threats, where most of the time is spent, and some of these meetings have gone for an hour and some of them have gone for 2.5 hours. The biggest discussion centers around an overwhelming alarm for student mental health, for negative influence of social media, and the state of our culture today and how that affects our kids. I'll get a little more deeper into those conversations once all of the SWOTs are done and we can get into the second process is processing how we can kind of brainstorm solutions. The third item is in those discussions out with faculties and staff, what I've realized is that a lot of the teachers don't fully understand how the district's supplies either resources or teachers, any of that is kind of vague to them. So the executive team is working currently on a video PowerPoint presentation that will go out eventually to the faculty and staff in faculty meetings to talk about staffing standards related to FTE, the allocation of personnel, pupil per spending of each campus, budget line instruction, professional development, technology, curriculum, and other classroom resources. It'll also get into the finances that go behind payrolls and insurance and how those expenditures are made. Faculty and staff should look for this discussion to pop up in their faculty meetings in a very near future. My goal there was to get us all out and have a discussion. I think in discussing with the executives, some of these discussions had not been had since probably prior to the COVID. And a lot of new teachers don't understand the processes of how a school is staffed and why does one school appear to have more than another. And all of that, we'll try to attempt to explain all that to them so that we can kind of get some understanding. Part of the 3 district probably confusion comes from people not understanding how the processes work. So that's a good start on that. And then in closing, as Mr. Hill already noted, I'd like to mark the passing of Carson Salmon this week. Carson was a junior at Jefferson Forest, a participant in Susie G. CTE automotive program. And to quote his principal this week, Ben Martin stated in a letter to the homes of all of the students, Carson was a true Cavalier and will certainly be missed by his entire community. Right now, I know that they're working on some memorial services and things like that, so we'll keep people posted as to how that works out. So that is the extent of my report tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, any questions on that? 2.02 Virginia Retirement System audit. Mr. Hagler?
Yes, good evening. As part of our audit process, which is ongoing right now for our central office audit, reported on our school activity audits, I think at the last board meeting, they do a separate audit on the Virginia retirement system and how we compile the information and submit that to make sure all the calculations are correct. They do quite a bit of sampling on when people terminate, when they get hired, and everything that pertains to those calculations. Pleased to report that we got a clean audit this year and with no findings throughout the whole year. So if you have any questions on that, but they do an extensive detailed look into all the calculations.
Questions, comments? Great. All right, thank you, Mr. Hagler. All right, moving on to informational items. Start time switch, elementary and secondary. Dr. Woodford?
Good evening, members of the board. Tonight, I bring a proposal for you to consider that really began as a discussion last year about lengthening the elementary school day. Currently, our elementary school day is 30 minutes shorter than the secondary school day. While this is definitely allowable in the standards of quality, elementary teachers are always looking for more time for intervention, for reading and math, more instructional time for hands-on science and history, anytime they can squeeze into the day. What came out of that initial discussion with instructional staff, principals, and the executive team was a consideration of changing start times. So as I said, the initial reason for the change was to add time to the elementary school day. If we were to consider now switching our elementary and middle school or secondary start times, we could add 15 minutes to our elementary school day, if not more. Because elementary bus runs are shorter than secondary runs, that would possibly give us more time because there's not such a large gap between the drop-off for secondary students in the morning and then go to the pickup of the elementary student and vice versa in the afternoon. The other reason that we would like to have this change is that we have really been thinking a lot about our pre-K through 5th grade students waiting for buses, sometimes in the dark, especially during our winter hours. This has been a cause of concern for many years with parents and staff and our transportation department, some of our bus drivers. So we have worked really hard to make things as safe as possible, but it would help if we would be able to switch those runs in the morning. Also, while we were brainstorming whether switching start times was something that was going to give us more time in the elementary school day, we began talking to principals, and we then heard some more really good reasons for this adjustment in start times. Our high school students would be able to start their after-school practices or their jobs earlier in the day if they were to come to school earlier and then get out earlier in the afternoons. This would also help them have more time for after-school practices. They would be able to start practice a little bit earlier. Parents wouldn't have to be coming out so late at night, or students wouldn't have to be going home and then doing a lot of homework after a long academic day and long practices. It would also align with our availability for away games to match our competitors. We also hope that an unexpected positive consequence would be that we would have more available drivers for away events. Again, elementary routes are shorter because those routes are centered around those elementary schools. When you move to a secondary run, they're picking up all the elementaries, so some of those secondary runs can go an hour, hour and a half. So by having shorter elementary runs, our buses would be able to get back to the high school to do more away games, more events, which has been an issue for us really in the last 2 or 3 years. So currently, our elementary day starts at 7:45 and ends at 2:15, and our secondary day starts at 8:45 and ends at 3:45. we would like to propose that our secondary day start at 7:45 and end at 2:45. And then our elementary students would start at 8:45 and end at 3:30. A few additional things to consider as you're thinking about this decision. Currently, every middle and high schooler we compete against in sports, each of those schools ends 20 to 60 minutes before we do. Most of our surrounding counties have secondary students going earlier. So this means that they want to start games early, and we often have to push them later because of our dismissal time. It also allows those schools, when they come to compete against us, sometimes they have almost an hour of warm-up time while our students are getting very little warm-up time because we're trying to get those games in. Another thing I think that is important to think about as you're thinking about this decision is the reality that parents of young children may have to think about different daycare options in the morning, that they might need to work through that. So that's one of the reasons we're bringing this now, because we want to give plenty of notice if you decide that you would like to approve our request. That would give parents plenty of time in the morning to be thinking about those arrangements. A lot of parents in the morning leave their younger ones with their high schoolers, but if high schoolers or middle schoolers are going to school earlier, then they would have to think about who's going to put the little ones on the bus if they're not there. Again, our original reason for wanting to do this was the hope that we would be able to extend the elementary day. Right now, I can safely say we can add 15 minutes, and we're hoping, obviously, we have a lot of transportation routes. We've looked at it generally, so we know we can at least get 15 minutes. We might actually be able to get the 30, but to put the hours and hours it would take to really look at those routes, we want to be sure that you are supporting that rather than putting all that work in and then us not doing it. So we can at least get that 15 minutes our teachers would like, and we might be able to get the full 30 minutes to make those school days the same. Also, one of the things that, again, I've said is that we hope to increase the availability of drivers for away competitions. And it also, just to assure you, it won't change our partnership with RVGS, CVGS, STEM Academy, or Early College. When looking at their start and end times, they can stay exactly the way they are. As a matter of fact, for CVGS, they run 2 sessions. Typically, our Jefferson Forest High School, Liberty High School students go to the second session because we start school later. It'll actually open up the opportunity that they could actually go to first session or second session at CVGS. So it does open up some opportunities. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have at this time. And if I don't have the answers, I'll be happy to look into it more and get those answers to you.
Questions? John?
Yeah, you may have said this if you did, I'm sorry, I missed
That's
it.
fine.
But if we were to approve this, when would you want to implement this? Next
School year.
Okay.
Yes, at the start of 25, 26.
So we can't, the only reason we can't start and finish at the same time, both schools, is because of the amount of buses we got now.
Right. Well, we would have to hire more drivers. And Mr. Hagler may be able to speak even a little bit more to it. When we reversed that, we used to go all at the same time, and we found money savings by reducing it.
Yeah, back when we had the recession, we looked into that and we split the times, and we probably, I think, I have to dig back, but it was 20, 25 plus buses and drivers, because they could do both.
A lot of our drivers do an elementary and a secondary run to help us, you know.
One other thing I was thinking about, and maybe you thought about this or talked to someone about it, but I know when I was a kid, I would take my younger brother to school and then go. So I don't know if that's pretty common these days. Is that something? Because if this were the case, right, the older child, the high school student, would not be able to take their sibling to school because they would have to go first. I don't know if that's a common thing now or not. But.
Yeah, I don't know that, and I'm not sure even if the principals would know specifically. I do know that our elementary kids get there pretty early, like 7:10, 7 o'clock. So most of the times parents are still home, and most of the time the younger ones are the older students are still in the bed. So I could look into that though. That's
It's just
definitely a
something I was
good
thinking.
consideration.
Would this affect the number of school days?
No, sir.
Lessen it by any?
No. Well,
I'm meeting the because we gotta have X amount of days.
right. So high schoolers still have to have the 990 hours. So that's what the high school is built on. So elementary don't have to go as many hours. Next month, I'm gonna propose a calendar though, that is going to be a little shorter than the 990 to give us a few more days for professional training and work days for teachers. Right now I'm getting feedback from teachers and staff members on that calendar, so I can present that to you next month, so. It doesn't affect the number of days though.
Yeah, all right.
Any other questions, comments?
So if you add another 15 minutes, would it be 3:45? Would it be at the end of the day?
It would probably be at the beginning, and because we still want to take advantage of the high schoolers getting out early enough to get to games. So if we squeezed it in, we'd probably move it back the other way.
And you'd be able to squeeze it in and still have the same bus drivers do both?
Yeah, we'd have to look, and we want to be sure. That's why there are, how many bus routes do you run?
408 runs a day. So a run is from the school to home or from home to school, so 408 runs per day.
So we'd have to look specifically at each run and see how it kind of adds
You
up.
might have to change a little bit of the.
They may have, like,
which
once we
bus
get
driver
into
picks
it
up who.
and looking at it, we will have a better idea if it could be doable or not.
Right.
And then, along with what Mr. Knight was saying, as far as would the elementary schools be able to have somebody there in case the kids are dropped off or a little earlier because of work and because nobody would be at home? Is that even a possibility?
I don't know. Because of the contracted day for teachers and staff, their contracted days kind of go with the hours of school. So we would have to pay overtime if we were to ask Paris to do that, or stretch outside our teacher contracts. During COVID, we talked to the YMCA and they were able to put a few more morning programs in place. It really depends on the availability of being able to put a program in a school and if they're willing to come for a shorter amount of time, or is the YMCA willing to fund a program or any, daycare for an hour in the morning and that's it. Now, I definitely think part of what we've talked about is when you're having to adjust bus runs, there may be that we ask people to come in 30 minutes early to watch kids as they're coming in off buses. But as early as parents going to work, I'm not sure we could do exactly that. But
I think the other thing that's important too is it's almost doing a reversal where we've heard feedback of, hey, my younger kids are getting out before my high school kids.
Yeah.
So we're dropping the younger kids off
You don't have a babysitter.
and you don't have a babysitter possibly. So it is a reverse effect of you've got someone at home in the afternoon versus not in the morning. So
yeah. I think you're gonna find people either way, or there's gonna be some heartburn with it, for sure.
It never made sense to me why high schoolers are going to school later, being that they're getting ready to go out into the work world,
Yeah, I think it honestly was a research around the time of,
Said younger
high
kids learn
schoolers, if they
better.
sleep in, they learn better kind of things.
That's what I was told.
But when I look at surrounding counties, most of our secondary kids go to school earlier, and it really, I do think probably is to get them to afternoon jobs, get them to sports events, because, right now we are really pushing our kids to late sports events because of our dismissal.
I have one more comment.
sure.
So, me, and when I see 15
You want it to
extra
be for PE,
minutes,
don't you?
I think more physical activity available time. Just something to throw out there, 15
They can
extra
read
minutes.
and run. I got it.
It's good for the brain, it's good for the
Yeah.
body.
Definitely. I do think that any time you can give allows for more things like that. Yeah.
I actually, just to throw this out there, I was listening to a podcast where a psychologist and and a behavioral person was talking about just how important that development is with children and the interactive play and
Yes.
what it does for their future. And in fact, if they don't gain that at a young age, once that time passes, they can never get it. It's one time and one time only. So I think you learn a whole lot, from recess and PE, more than just getting in shape, so.
Yes.
And I would have to agree with that. And they've even done studies with 1 recess a day or 2 recesses a day. And you'd think that with 2 recesses a day, you get less done. But the test scores all showed that with 2 recesses a day, the kids did better.
Right.
So yeah, if we can implement that, maybe that's a trade-off. We'll vote for this if we, if we get at least one
We
more
can
recess.
bargain,
Yeah, we can
7.5 minutes for math and 7.5 for recess. I got it.
Or math while you're playing.
Math while you're playing, yeah. Jump rope games.
Any other comments, questions? All right, thank you. All right, 3.02, policy updates. Mr. DePere?
There are 7 policies up for review. For information, there will not in this session or this group be any policy actions from the August meeting. We did not have an August meeting. But the 7 that are up for review from the September 12th meeting was CC Administrative Organizational Plan. Number 2, EFB Food Services. Number 3, EFC Nutrition Charges. Number 4, IC/ID School Year, School Day. Number 5, IKE Student Promotion, Retention, and Remediation. Number 6, JHCA Physical Examinations for Students. And number 7, JRCA School Service Providers Use of Student Personnel Information.
All right, so that is for policy updates. Any questions or comments? Okay, we will go to, we finished on the staff reports, additional action items, 6.01 supplemental appropriations.
Yes, this was brought to you at the last meeting where we were awarded a Title I school improvement grant for $130,000. This was a very quick turnaround with Dr. Woodford having to implement this, and all the funds have already been spent. We just need the official approval by the board, and we're going to be submitting for reimbursement here shortly. So bringing this before you was brought before you for information at the last board meeting.
So do I have a motion to approve the supplemental appropriations as presented by Mr. Hagler? I have a motion by Mr. Daniels. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, sorry, Mr. Holbrook. I knew it come from that way, but I want to make sure. All right, so I have a motion by Mr. Daniels and a second by Mr. Holbrook. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. 6.02, award Stewartsville Elementary School HVAC PPEA project. Mr. Hagler?
Yes, the board on its CIB project had a HVAC and partial roof replacement at Stewartsville Elementary School on the docket coming up. We did put out a PPA, solicited PPA. For that project, 3 vendors put in for that. We've reduced it to 2 for actual interviews. The facility committee interviewed both of those vendors. Then we asked for some supplemental information from both of those, and then we met earlier this week to score those companies. From that, Moores had the best score on that, and the committee recommends that the contract be given to Moores to go ahead and schedule this for next summer for Stewartsville HVAC and also the roof over the cafeteria area. And the price for that was $1,268,947. Be happy to answer any questions on that. But in order to hit the timeline to get it next summer, there is long lead times on some of this equipment. That's why it's being brought before the board, so that if we award it, then they go ahead and get the orders in and move forward with that.
Will that secure that quote, that price by ordering materials now, or is that subject to change based on the market?
This is a hard bid, so they're committed to this price. These were sealed bids, so they're committed to that price. If they get into something unknown that wasn't even part, like behind a wall or something, there could be a change order. But for the delivery of this and also some upgrades to the electrical, in the electrical room, some things are very outdated there. This is a committed price.
And is this Stewartsville Elementary, so we're planning on keeping it open for a while longer then?
A lot of discussion on that, but I believe so. There's quite a few kids out there, and I don't know if there's a room to put them all in one place. And I think that's what the board struggled with instead of rezoning and doing a lot of different things. So I think it's, executive staff and talking this through, it'd be one big school in the Goodview area at this time. So some of the equipment's already failing. So I think if you were trying to do something by next year, it's either you got to do something or you got to get the equipment, because it's not going to last much longer. And I think it's the prudent thing to move forward and take care of that. And if in the future that can be revisited, then it can be revisited at a later time, and not this crunch that there's something that's going to fail.
To go along with that, we went out and did visits to both schools and looked at room usage, looked at possibilities of adding mobile units, portables. And nobody likes that idea. When would you come to the conclusion at the end that the elementary school during this process would be over 700 students? It makes it quite unmanageable. So in our discussion and going through the options that existed last year, I think it behooves us to act in a prudent way to put the cost assessment in front of a move as to what it would cost to do those things. Also look at the feasibility of maybe adding an additional wing. And I think at some point, you can't really make those moves until you have those calculations done. So to me, in my processing, and I think those of us that worked on it, Dr. Woodford and Randy Hagler, our conclusion is that we need to go through a process in the proper order, which means we secure the roof and the AC, and then we move to a 2 to 3 year process of feasibility, finding the funding if we need to enlarge a school site, and ultimately, most likely rezone. So you can't do that in a short period of time, especially when there's large dollar amounts set on it. And at this point, you're putting planning of a building before funding of the building. So that to me is not a prudent direction to go. So it doesn't mean at some point we don't do something there, but I think it's too quick. And looking at what to do with the preschool is another issue. If we looked at all options of keeping things partially, but if you moved them all, it'd be over 800. That's just not a practical setup.
Yeah, and to add to that, I don't think we have the money to do anything else other than this at this point.
Right.
I mean, I hate to spend the money and then say, oh, we're not going to keep the building, but
There are discussions at the state level about construction grants, those kinds of things. I think you go that route before you decide to build and not have the funds for it.
Right. Well, and I'm just gonna say publicly, I will not support modular units. I'm not gonna do it. I mean,
I get it.
we had modular units at Forest Middle School for 25 years that were supposed to be there temporarily.
And that's always the case. They always seem to stay there longer than they're supposed to. And that is, something that we thought about as well. But that's why funding has to come before a move of this.
Do you know when that grant might?
They're supposed to be putting out something in October, November.
Okay.
All of the superintendents have been kind of looking at this, wondering what it's going to look like, but they don't have any details yet. But even if that wasn't the case, that gives us time to find other options.
I agree with you. I think it's the right thing to do for now. And, hopefully we'll have an influx of elementary students in that area. And we're ahead of the game.
Well,
So,
we don't know what the future holds, right? But we know that we have students and teachers in that building right now, and we need to take care of them right now.
absolutely.
And there is a lot of discussion about their future, so let's just let them settle in and have a good year, and you know, a 3-year process is a 3-year process. Let's make some good decisions in that 3-year process.
For that, you need information, and that's what you're
Absolutely.
proposing that we get, so I think that,
Absolutely.
you know, I think we know what we need to do.
It's data and funding. We gotta go in the right direction.
And I think it's important for people to understand too, that the price for this HVAC and system is a whole lot less than what it was originally proposed. And so, you know, we're coming in at, what, 1.8, 1.7,
Well,
less
and you're getting
less
a
than it
roof
was
and
projected to be.
upgrade electrical
Yeah.
upgrade as well, so it's,
Which it needs desperately.
yes.
So this is a good move.
All right, well,
Motion.
any other comments? Do I have a motion to award Stewart's Elementary School HVAC PPEA project?
So moved.
So I'm gonna let Mr. Knight. And do we have a second? Mr. Nelms. So I have a motion by Mr. Knight and a second by Mr. Nelms. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. All right, so Ms. Johnson, is this where I go to the policy?
Correct.
Okay, so is that 6.03? Just want to make sure. All right, so 6.03, policy JFCG. Mr. Prepared, is that?
Yes, since early July, the governor's executive order 33 came down on a cell phone-free campus. The superintendents and individual divisions have been wrestling with how to implement this. And so the reason we're bringing it for action tonight is because we do have an implementation plan. And to meet the expectation of the governor, which is implementation by January 1st, we felt that we needed as much lead time as possible to be able to enact an implementation plan. So at this particular point, we have started conversations. We're observing other divisions that have already done it and kind of pulling information from them. We have also started the discussion with principals as to what it might look like on their middle school or high school campus. I personally have been out with students at lunch, sitting in, so far, Stanton River and Liberty High School. We'll be going to JF real soon. I've met with one student council. We'll meet with the other 2 student councils just to kind of get their input. At this point in time, the implementation, and I'll let Dr. Woodford get into this a little more specifically, the implementation really centers around how do you inform your faculty, staff, administration, how do you inform parents, and how do you inform the students. And so what we've been working on is across the board on all 3 of those. And at this point in time, if we don't take action now, we'll have less than a month to implement. If we take action tonight, we have the better part of 2 months to implement. I can tell you at this particular point in time, many of us were of the impression that, you know, we could be lenient on this policy. But if you go to the resource we're going to provide for you and that we provided for you already, the video, and that we're going to eventually put out to the public, if you go to the Commonwealth conversation with Ms. Yonkin and Dr. Haight, who wrote The Anxious Generation, you're going to see statistics and you're going to see a lot of things in there that quickly started to change our own minds. And I made a statement at a superintendent's video that if I get it wrong, you'll correct my quote. This is no longer about just access. This is about mental health. And when you watch the video, you get the idea of that when you hear statistics. And I've tried to convey this to the students as I sit around the table with them, where female in high school, suicide rates have gone up since 2012 when the data came in, up 167%. Boys 190%. So I asked the question as we would sit at the table, with statistics as they are, and looking at suicide rates from 2010, do the calculation, are you okay with this kind of loss and seeing the escalation of suicides in particular, but also anxiety and depression? And quite often the students will tell me no. So I know this is a serious matter. So you'll see a chart on the screen there that talks about the distraction, that talks about how many times a day they look up or they look at their phone. This is not a simple implementation, and we do realize that we have to get students embodied into this discussion as well. What we found in watching and looking at statistics across the state where people have already implemented it is that it takes about a month for the kids to acclimate. And so the long run is a mental health issue. It's not an access issue anymore. One statistic, and then I'll turn it over to Dr. Woodford, is that if you get to 7 hours a day in viewing, anything past 3 to 7 really accelerates suicide, and that's a real concern. And so the kids would say, well, how can you correlate the two? Well, if we can put it under control for 7 hours, we have to also acclimate the parents into assisting us as well. But we want to do as best we can for the mental health of our students, and this gives us a better opportunity to educate them. So I'll let Dr. Woodford go through her presentation as well.
So I just want to say that what we are recommending in our policy is no cell bell to bell. And that means from the arrival at school at the start of the day until the dismissal at the end of school during the academic day. And that includes lunch and in between classes. And as Mr. DePere said, originally as an executive team, we were thinking, well, what's the harm of just lunch? You know, that can't be that bad. And then we started doing some research. Mr. Knight, it sounds like we're quoting some things from this book. This is Jonathan Haidt, and he is the person who provided a lot of the research and was in that Commonwealth conversation. But he talks about not just the use of cell phones causing mental health problems, but the lack of play and the lack of children engaging together during lunch and between classes and all of that. And so, as Mr. DePere said, this is really not about access, it's about mental health and our concern for our students' mental health and allowing them more time for social interaction. The statistics that I think really woke us up and what we want to share with parents and students right now, emergency room visits for self-harm have increased 188% for girls and 48% for boys since the advent of internet-connected phones and social media between 2010 and 2012. Suicide rates have increased 167% for girls and 91% for boys since that time. And again, that's the advent of the smartphone with internet access at all times, and when Facebook bought Instagram, and that moved our children's social lives onto social media. Students spend, and they've reported this, an average of 7 to 8 hours a day on their phones. And they pretty much have access to everything in the world 24/7. Teens receive more than 200 notifications a day on their smartphones. The other reason that when we are looking at storage options for our children, one of the things that we would like to consider are pouches that magnetically lock during the school day. When they get to school, they put them in their own individual pouch. It locks. As they leave school at the end of the day, they can just tap their pouch on a demagnetizer and it opens up. It's their pouch. They have access. They have their phone in their possession. They don't have access to their phone. But it also keeps them when they're in class or when they're interacting with others, those constant pings that they're getting, there's nothing they can do about that. Turn them off. You're not getting notified. You're not getting pings. That's taking their attention away. That's increasing their anxiety. So we would also like to consider purchasing pouches that students would store in during the school day. We feel like that this may be hard for parents, hard for students, and that's why we want to go out and explain the why. And we want to have conversations with our students in how do you want us, how can we help you make this okay? How can you feel better about this? How can we implement this? Get their input, because they're very savvy and they do understand that there's an addiction problem. It's going to be hard. It's just like any of us who have some type of addiction. But I think they recognize there's time for change. Going back to some of, the old methods of, if you have an emergency, call the school office rather than text your child. But I think now is the time for us to say we care about our students' mental health and what they have access to. And a great example that Jonathan Haidt uses is, this would be like 25 years ago if we were to get on the bus holding our TV and we would go to class and we're watching our TV, and we go to the lunchroom and we're watching our TV. That would be absurd. That's what our kids do every day in class. They're constantly watching movies, they're watching TV, they're looking at things on their phone. And one of the things that I think also really stuck out to me is that we really over supervise our students. We're so overprotective of them in the real world because we're so afraid that they're going to get hurt, or they're going to get, have to deal with a conflict with a friend, or they're going to get bullied on the playground. But yet we give them access to strangers on the internet 24/7, and we under-supervise that. So I feel like it is a call for us to try to do something to help our students. And so that's why we're bringing the policy that's bell to bell, no cell. And we would like to consider the pouches and keeping it from them all day. We do have a lot of work ahead of us. Talking to parents, we're going to schedule parent meetings in every zone. We are going to go out and talk to all the kids, the student advisory. Mr. Duperre's talked to a lot of people. And we're just going to be transparent and honest. So.
Yes, sir.
A couple comments.
Sure.
One, I know that I'm totally on board. I hear what you're saying, and I agree with almost all of it, or probably all of it. I do know parents are gonna, since 1999, Columbine, right, changed everything. Parents have some level of fear when their children go to school, and then you add in Sandy Hook and all these other things, right? And so I know, I've heard parents say this, and more are gonna say it. What about when there's an emergency? What about when there's something major going on? How do I, contact my child quickly? And, if you say, well, you call the office, but there's all these people calling. So I think talking with the parents on how situations like that would be handled, I think is going to be huge, because most of us as parents don't want our children on phones all day. But that's the one part of a phone, when I send my kids to a friend's house to spend the night, there is some comfort in knowing that if something weird was happening, they could get in touch with me, right? And so I think that's going to be something, obviously, when you're talking with parents, to talk to them about. The other thing I'll mention is, I think obviously the mental health part of it is the most important part of it. In addition to, the dangers of strangers and what they can see that they shouldn't see with their young eyes. And the last part, I don't think we talk about enough, is the temptation to cheat. And, I don't want to put any of our students down. I think we have great students, and my children are some of those students. But with AI and ChatGPT and things like that, it can do your math for you. And, there's going to be a temptation there. And I think, so it's going to improve learning even from that, in that way as well. And I think going into college and work and being prepared to actually not have something that does your work for you. If you want to use that later after you know how to do this stuff, it's different, right? But when you're learning, it's just too much temptation there. So that's one more thing to think about when we're talking to parents, I think.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you brought up that about a major emergency and event. One of the things that we've talked about is the fact that when there is, let me go to the extreme. Let's say there is someone in the building trying to harm children. You really want kids quiet, listening to the adult in the room. The adults will always have their cell phones with them, will always have a way to reach out. On the computers, we have a 911 quick call out to get people there. And most of the time in a serious incident, the time that it's happening, you want there to be that focus for kids to be paying attention to the adults so that we can quickly fix that. And then, like I said, in our crisis bags, or maybe I haven't said, maybe I said it to IGA, we can put portable demagnetizers in. So in an emergency, we can quickly unlock phones for students and things like that. Because I do think that's the biggest concern that our parents have. And so we definitely will try to address that and give them some assurance that we will get them notified. The other flip side of that is sometimes something will happen and kids will panic and then start sending things to parents, and it's really okay. They just haven't given us enough time to guys, everything's okay. This is just a practice. So I think it can be good and bad both ways. So, but definitely, I think that's probably the biggest parent concern.
And some of us parents would like the pouches,
At home?
At home, and when we put them in their cars and they're driving.
Yes. Well, you can buy them for home. There are boxes.
I like that.
Other questions or comments?
I was gonna ask about the teachers being able to demagnetize them in case of emergency or whatever.
If they have the portable, and they're pretty expensive, so we'll probably have them in certain places, but teachers will have theirs. They will always have some form of communication to 911. We have it loaded on their computers. We have Raptor, which is connected to their cell phones, and their cell phones will always be available for work things, which is calling a 911, an emergency code to Raptor to let them know something's going on. And then it's really in that reunification or when you're trying to get help, we'll have those around the school, the portable ones.
And I have to say, when there was that lockdown in Liberty High School, I was substitute teaching in Liberty Middle School.
Mm-hmm.
And the middle school kids all got out their phones.
Yes.
And they were panicking, talking to their siblings in the high school. Oh no, there's something. And it was just a constant chaos.
Yes.
I could not keep them, and I'm a seasoned teacher and I've never had problems with school. And it was just chaos.
Yeah.
Whereas if they didn't have their phones, I'd say, you know what, we're gonna just be calm, we're gonna keep working on our schoolwork because we were on lockout, not lockdown.
Right.
And we could have continued to teach, or we could have continued to do stuff, but because the kids were just freaking out by, listening and going on Facebook or whatever,
And it gets
Instagram.
bigger and bigger and bigger.
And it got bigger and bigger, and they were not listening. It was chaos. So
It's gonna take some training of parents and kids.
Yeah.
I've been in Florida, both scenarios of watching a lockdown because of a bomb threat or a bomb scare. And I saw the negative side of it. And that was, we had 6 to 8 foot fences all the way around it. And literally parents were asking their kids to climb the fence. And so we lost control. And then in another scenario, I saw where the kids were perfectly okay with their phone. So it really comes down to how well you train the kids. And like she said, in reunification, you would have go bags that have those in them so that when you got to a safe place, you could unlock them and say, okay, now you can communicate with your parents. I think at the end of the day, I think the author mentions it, that it actually can be more secure for the kids if they are not distracted by the use of their phone. So again, I've seen both ways. So I know that the kids can do it. I'm sure of that.
Questions, comments? The only thing that I would just want clarification on is around Chromebooks.
Mhm.
Our kids are very savvy. So we do have those blocks where you can't add communicator or text
Can't get
messages
on-
being forwarded to
Yeah.
certain accounts and so forth on Chromebooks. So all of that would be cut out, is that correct?
Excuse me, yes. Also, like for middle school, elementary school, email communication to the outside is completely cut off on those. High school, we still allow external email communication. And that's something we need to, change that. We can obviously, because I feel like that's going to pick up quite a bit. So that may be something we have to do.
Email me.
As far as being able to control the filter does block like social media for sure, other chat sites, but of course, there's all things slip through. But then the teachers also have the ability with the classroom management software to block the students down to very specific sites to keep them on task. But I feel like some new things are going to show up on the Chromebook side because of the students not having access to their cell phones. And we will definitely have to address that as we see it.
Probably some old things will come back around too, like passing notes,
Yep.
Can't wait to see a teacher intercept some notes.
That's good though.
Yeah, little football.
And we are this would go into effect January 1.
It is set for, our expectation for January 1 of this year, school year.
Are we,
I think the biggest thing we definitely want the support of the bell to bell. And that's why we're asking about putting action in the policy tonight, because if you don't agree with bell to bell, our training and implementation totally switches. So that's why we've kind of rushed to bring this to you.
And I think if you keep this in mind, it's not about access, it's about mental health.
Yeah.
That is where we have come to conclusion of sitting in meetings and watching videos and those kinds of things. It really is about their mental health. And they'll deny that. I've heard that already. They'll deny that. But we have to do something at this point.
Now, I'm okay with
You can't listen to mentally ill people,
Yeah.
right?
What's that?
So you don't wanna listen to mentally ill people. If it's
I
affecting, I'm saying if it's affecting their health, they wouldn't know.
I know that we.
It's gonna be tough at first.
I know
Very
that,
hard.
I know that it's difficult to educate kids who are distracted.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
And part of the addiction is saying that I'm not distracted. That is part of it. So I know that the process of taking away is difficult. But again, I've talked to several superintendents, one just the other day at a meeting. In 20 to 30 days, you will see a noticeable difference in these kids, and they will admit it. So to me, it's worth that when you look at, as I circulate this county in every single meeting, whether it be with parents, whether it be with teachers or principals, they all say the same thing. Our biggest crisis is mental health. This is part of it.
What other counties close by are using the pouches? Because it's really hard for me to get on board with that.
So I believe Rockbridge is using it, Danville City using it.
Appomattox, I think, has, I'm not sure if they're using a pouch or not. Fredericksburg definitely is using a pouch.
We definitely talked about turn it off and put it away, but here's what we know, they're gonna be going to the bathroom, they're gonna be under their desk, they're gonna be in their textbooks, like we do. I mean, we can't even admit we're addicted, and I think that's the hard piece, and
I guess my only fear would be that, being devil advocate here, is if there was something tragic to happen, wouldn't you want your kid to be the last voice you hear on that phone? That would be, that's just me. And if it's locked, they can't, that's just me.
the other thing I would say is, people always talk about the good old days, right? But everyone in this room grew up in a time where we did not have phones at school, and we made it. We made it just fine. And I will say that for me personally, I think it was a better time as far as like interaction with people goes. My grandfather, who's passed away now, used to say, we need to find that man that made that cell phone, and we need to kill that man. and I mean, he just saw, what it was doing even then, right? And I I guess the last thing I'll say is two things. On the pouches, we're not voting on that right now, right?
No, we've actually, in here, we just said they'll be put away and stored.
Okay.
We're gonna then write a regulation that'll describe how they're gonna be stored.
No,
So,
like book bag or
or in
okay.
a locker or in a pouch.
And with the pouches, has there been any research on, grants or
I actually have already written one,
Okay.
so we've got one.
I suspect there are people out there and companies out there and groups out there that care enough about mental health of children that would help us pay for something like that, right? Because we obviously don't have extra money laying around, but this is very important.
Right.
And then I guess the very last thing I'll say, I'm sorry for talking so much. I think it's worth bringing up that as parents, teachers, staff, people in the community, we need to be setting the example of putting our own phones away. I'm super guilty of this. I work in this industry, but it's going to be hard for us to tell our kids constantly how important it is to put your phone away and how bad it is for your mental health. And this is why we're doing this. But I can't really pay attention to you during dinner because I'm looking at my phone while we're at Olive Garden, right? So I think it's worth talking about this and pushing each other to also put our phones away.
And I think one of the aspects of implementation is, first of all, in that 7-hour period, is getting the teachers on board, because they're going to have to model it. Of course, they have to have a phone for emergencies and in some cases, they use it for their instruction. So I think we've got to have, the expectation is for them to model it right, but the expectation is for parents to, at a point, start to see the significance of why we're doing what we're doing and then come on board themselves. Because every time I've met with students, I've basically pulled out 2 phones and said, how can I not be addicted? It's all day long. And I think there's some aspects of that we're gonna have to model. I mean, let's say I'm in a high school class observing and I get an important message. Well, I'm not gonna pull my phone out while they're doing a lesson. I'm gonna have to exit the room and go to a secure place to do that. It's just inappropriate for me not to model what we're asking the kids to model. But again, I'm gonna go back to, why do we need to do this? So we can actually grasp the kids' minds and educate them.
And then regarding I know you wanted to public comments, but regarding why don't we just leave them in the backpacks or whatever? I've taught for, during that time. And I was constantly, they would put it under their legs during a quiz and look at and get their answers and I had to be like a hawk. It was ridiculous.
That's where we gotta start holding the kids accountable.
Well, yeah, no,
That's
absolutely. Well, I don't know how many
It comes with the
times.
training.
But see, that's the other thing too. I would take away their phones. Other teachers would not. So I was the bad guy and other teachers. So this pouch thing, I love that idea because then the responsibility's on the child to put it in the pouch and get it closed. And if it isn't, then and then it's not good teacher, bad teachers.
And it's also about that moving between classes. There's no way you can monitor every child moving, every child in the cafeteria who's sneaking it out, all of that. This kind of provides that it's gone, you can't get it, nobody can come in and play, nice teacher, nice sub, nice, that's it. And then, so.
I'll say this and then I'll stop. This is not so much about the actions that we will prevent. This is solely about mental health. It's not about me cheating, because if I do get rid of it and I take it away, then cheating no longer becomes a problem. It is solely about mental health, and that's what we need to get people to understand. So to say here we're doing it to stop cheating is really not. That's another whole discussion. This is literally about mental health, and we've seen it. We know. If you've been teaching long enough, like I have, you see that transition in the lunchroom. You see that transition in the classroom, and that's what we have to address. We have to engage these kids to understand that we are concerned about their mental health, not their cheating, not, what they're doing with it, but we need to change the mindset and really get them to understand that we do care about their learning and their mental health. And that's the bottom line.
One thing I do appreciate being in this policy is the fact that, like my son who is a type 1 diabetic, they are able to use it for medical devices. So I do appreciate that that is left in there and that concern is addressed. So, yeah. All right. Do I have a motion to approve policy JFCG as presented?
So moved.
All right, Ms. Purvis, and do I have a second by Mr. Holbrook?
Yep.
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Policy JFCG is approved. Appreciate the IGA getting that and getting it presented. All right, let's see here. It is time to go to public comment. Public comment portion of tonight's agenda is limited to 40 minutes. Speakers are asked to state their name and voting district. The school board is here to listen to your comments, but will not engage or respond to speakers during this 40-minute period. Please remember that this is a public meeting and that we expect all speakers to refrain from any foul, profane, abusive, or hateful language during their comments or any time while in attendance during this meeting. We also ask that speakers keep their remarks objective and about the school in nature. Please keep all comments limited to matters related to the public schools, and any comments that are harassing or amount to a personal attack against any identifiable individual, whether board member or staff or student, or having the potential to cause unnecessary delay or disruption to this meeting are prohibited. This is a public meeting for public matters. If a speaker is not present when their name is called, we will proceed with the next name on the list. An individual who has not signed up to speak may not substitute for that time slot. Individuals will have 4 minutes to address the board. An alarm will sound when an individual has 30 seconds remaining, and a second alarm will sound when the allotted 4 minutes have expired. When this second alarm sounds, please discontinue speaking and allow the next person in line to come to the podium. Should you be unable to finish your comments, please send or give them to Ms. Johnson, and she will give them to board members. Please do not adjust the microphone at the podium as it has been positioned for optimum audio quality. We do not have anyone signed up for public comment time. Is there anyone who would like to speak? All right. Being none, I will close public comment time. And do I have a motion to go into closed session?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we go into closed session pursuant to Code of Virginia 2.2-3711A119 to discuss the assignment, appointment, performance, disciplining, and release of contract for specific school board employees. 19, for discussion of plans to protect school safety in consultation with law enforcement officials, where discussion in an open meeting would jeopardize the security of school facilities.
I have a motion to go into closed session by Mr. Daniels. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Nelms. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are in closed session.
I didn't know that. He didn't tell me that. Okay.
Oh, okay.
All right. Do I have a motion to come out of closed? Mr. Daniels, and do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Nelms. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, we are out of closed session. All right, approval of consent agenda. Do I have a motion? Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Johnson.
Whereas Bedford County School Board has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and where Section 2.2-3712D of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by this school board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore be it resolved that the Bedford County School Board hereby certifies that, to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which the certification applies, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered.
Yes.
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 All right, thank you for keeping me straight. All right, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
All right, have a motion by Mr. Holbrook. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Nelms. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda is approved. All right, committee reports. We'll start with you.
Well, we had the VA meeting in between the last time, right?
Yep.
So, not a lot to report there. We're just getting in started with the drawing review, the design review for the, for Liberty, Stent River,
Bedford Primary.
and Bedford Primary. Things are going well with that. We're in that, getting ready for the 65% review.
95%.
95%. We finished
And
65, we're getting ready for 95.
Yep.
I don't really have anything to add there.
The updates.
I'm on the same committee.
All right, good deal.
Just kind of touch on what he said. He just talked about the primary school, Stanton River and Liberty auditorium and canopies, and then from facilities, ongoing projects, Boonesboro, atrium is scheduled for summer 25. The boiler replacement at Stanton River Middle, summer 25. I'm just go with the summer 25 ones here. Forest Elementary School roof, Big Island Elementary School roof, New London Academy, some floor tile that needs to be replaced because it has some, was it asbestos under it?
Underneath it, yep.
So that's gonna be, summer 25 as well. Montville Elementary School window, replacement, summer 25 as well. And let's see, we're gonna begin work, with an engineering firm for the HVAC system upgrades at Stanton River High and Stanton River, and Liberty High as well. And that's all scheduled for summer 25, or summer of 26.
I didn't have any today, and I'll just defer the CPO.
Dr. Hubach?
So the CPO committee met on September 26th, and we learned a little bit more about the new accreditation system and the extra training that that's going to involve. We also got an update on the new math textbook adoption and learned that those aren't available yet for review, but that's supposed to be coming around the corner pretty quickly. We got an update on Freedom 424's training sessions and implementation of that into the curriculum, and that's actually a really exciting thing. So we're looking forward to the effects of that on the student body. And our next meeting is coming up October 22nd.
IGA met today, went over a policy that we approved tonight as well as several others. We meet again on November 12th.
Okay, need to go back to you?
Yes,
All right.
CTE committee will meet again on October 17th.
Okay. Budget and Finance Committee, we met on September 26th and went through a good portion. We revisited nutrition. Very interesting conversations on that. We're still working through some items. We talked about transportation, and next round, which we will start meeting on October 29th. Keep me honest, Dr. Woodford, are we heading into instruction?
Yes,
Okay.
specifically technology.
What we're gonna be doing, administration.
Administration.
And technology.
Okay. We are going line item by line item, understanding what we are spending our dollars on. As we ask questions, the staff is very engaged in answering questions, trying to figure out what we can do differently. So as we make changes or recommended changes, we will come back and share with the full board of things that we're finding or making recommendations around of how we spend those dollars differently. So, all right, comments and concerns from school board members?
Yeah, not too much to comment on as we're heading into Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving's obviously next month, but for a lot of people here in the Southeast, last couple of weeks with Helene and then now with Milton yesterday, just a lot of families are displaced and there's a lot going on, a lot of uncertainty for sure. So I just ask that you keep all those families in the western part of the state, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, just in your thoughts. We're very lucky the way that it went for us, but for others it has not been an easy road. So think of ways that you can get involved and help out, and just at the very least just pray for swift recoveries for those families. That's it.
I went to one of the practices for the drone club. Cindy Watson has put together a drone club that now encompasses TJ Elementary or Thomas Jefferson Elementary, Forest Middle, and also JF. And they are meeting at Forest Middle after school. There's a different day for each section. And she's doing national competitions. I think they are in January, so she's preparing for that. And she's offering to train anybody in the Liberty Zone as well as the Stanton River Zone if they want to start their own drone club. She'll help you know how to get grants and so on. So anyway, just wanted to let everyone know that this is exciting. The kids are doing great. They're working together, and it's really been a great addition to our school offerings.
No comment.
Mr. Ober?
Yeah, I'd just like to say I'm really glad that we passed that cell phone thing. I think it's gonna be a real game changer. You might not see it immediately. It's probably gonna get worse before it gets better, but I think it's definitely a big step in the right direction. And I'd just like to also remind anybody that's watching to look at the proposed time change. Is that posted on the,
It's on the presentation, but
is it on our website or anything?
no, it won't be posted on the website and all of that until the board approves
Also, it
a
can't.
change. But the presentation that I shared is on board docs
Yes.
under
Okay.
the agenda for
Okay.
tonight. Yes,
Okay.
sorry.
Yeah, we'll definitely look at that, because we definitely need some feedback on that, for sure. But that's really all I got.
Just a few things. First one, I don't know if it was an appropriate quote to quote my grandfather about taking out the cell phone. But let's remember he was about 90 when he said it. They get a pass. The other thing I was gonna say, I don't know if this is the right time to bring this up, but a couple of meetings ago, there was some discussion about one of the gyms was having HVAC problems. Liberty?
Yeah.
Has that been eradicated?
Yeah, I believe.
Okay.
It has leaked.
I checked on that earlier. I believe they might have been out there this week trying to take care of that. So we had to lift the unit off and put a new pan and fix that. So
So we should be.
I'll check up on that tomorrow, make sure, but it was supposed to be this week that was taken care of.
I know people were struggling in there. Apparently it was pretty hot, so. And then the last thing, just to kind of second what was said earlier about losing some people in the community recently. including a couple of students over the last couple of weeks, and having those families in our thoughts and prayers. I'd like to add Stanton River graduate Cameron Diggs to that list. I mentioned this last meeting. Cameron continues to fight in the hospital, so I would ask that you would lift up Keith and Ashley, his parents, in your thoughts and prayers, and also his.
But I'm willing to listen and learn and change my mind. I think that is a good example for all of us, but also for our students. But I do appreciate the fact that you were willing to share that, and appreciate the good things that you are doing, and taking that information that we're asking for and running with it and truly making a difference. So I do want to say thank you to that. To parents, to students, yes, it's going to be tough. But I have to say, that is something we all need to work on. I was sitting here, listening to the 7 hours. That's a lot. And I think we're all guilty of it, so I think we all can learn from it, and would say we need to exercise it at the office, at school, but also at home. I commend you guys for doing that and for bringing facts. It's going to be tough conversation, but we're going to support you. Let us know how we can help and what we need to do. We're certainly going to share feedback because I know we're going to get feedback. But I do believe it's the right thing to do. So I appreciate that. All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Mr. Nelms, and do I have a second by Mr. Holbrook?
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned.